Welcome to the Flight of the Past podcast, the programme where we talk to the pilots, the ground exhibitors and members of the local community about the Oxfordshire Family Fun Day. This programme is a Focus Biz podcast on behalf of Flight of the Past Limited, introduced by Adrian Moss. Air Transport Auxiliary was formed to deliver aircraft in the UK, releasing RAF pilots for combat. It began with 30 volunteer pilots, or men. In November 1939, women pilots were included, but restricted to single-engine, non-combat aircraft. When that restriction was lifted, women flew Spitfires, Hurricanes, and eventually four-engine bombers like the Lancaster. Molly Rose joined in 1941.
When I joined the ATA, they tested you to see whether they thought you would be safe to ferry light aircraft, and they then let you ferry those for a while, and you were flying things like Osters and Tiger Moss and any of that caliber. And when they thought you were competent on that, they put you onto a Harvard, and then onto a Hurricane. And I think that Joy will agree with me, the most exciting moment was when you either got a Hurricane or a Spitfire as the first single-feeder fighter that you were going to be ferrying. And of course you couldn't have tuition on that because they were single-seaters. And having proved that you could actually take that up and bring it down safely, because the taking off is always easy. You feel when the aircraft wants to go off. And quite another thing, bring it down. And you have to find out where the ground is. And having done that, you were then let loose on all the single-seater fighters, which was Hurricanes and Spitfires and Tempests and Typhoons, and all of them. And then it was the ATA's habit to get you onto always moving you on. To then did a course on light twin aircraft and on an Oxford, and that let you loose onto Oxfords and Lancers and those sort. And you then went on to heavy twins, which you did a course on the Hudson, and then you were free on all twin aircraft. And of course you were most useful to them if you could fly all of them, because it meant they could have jobs connecting, which helped enormously. And if you got to an aerodrome that there was no job for you going back, they moved you on in one of the two taxi aircraft, a Fairchild, which had 3 passengers and a pilot, and an Anson, which had 8 passengers and a pilot. And of course, when you were the pilot deputy to be on those, it was really quite testy because your colleagues were with you, and they jolly well going to criticise it. They were jolly well going to criticise any move that you made wasn't a good one. So you did pay attention very hard. But we always took an overnight bag with us in case we were stuck out, because we didn't do night flying unless, occasionally you got caught sort of rather late in the evening, nearly completing a job. And I have to say that one then did complete it. But we weren't on at night. And so life was extremely varied. And both Joy and I were down at Hamble, which was one of the 2 all-women's pools. And although the girls seemed to be getting a lot of notoriety at the moment, in fact there were 1,000 men with us. And of course they started it all. And it was entirely up to Pauline Gower that she got women involved at all. And so we've always felt extremely grateful to her. She was she was the daughter of an MP, and she really knew the right people to get in touch with to get things moving. And so when one picked up one's jobs in the morning, it could be you had a chit with the aircraft on it and where you were taking it from to, and you went off for the day, and sometimes you had 3 or 4 different types, which was exciting. And when you got a new type, you got the book on it out of the library, and you then, if you were being taxied somewhere, you read it up on the plane, and you always had this wonderful loose leaf book which was a very firm cardboard leaflet with the particulars of every aircraft that you would be called on to fly in it. And one always had those in the top of your flying booth, so that when you were coming into land, you could check on the stalling speed and so on. It was a very, very efficient organisation. And of course, I joined it not until 1942, when the whole thing had become very organised. The girls that were in it from the beginning had a much more sort of varied time and a more tricky time, I think. But it was the most extraordinary opportunity. We were incredibly lucky.
This programme was a Focus Biz podcast on behalf of Flight of the Past Limited.